I'm Wendy Marshall, and I'm a sculptor by profession, but I seem to do an awful lot of creativity in one way or another, and I'm quite involved in creating and designing the festival here. So I hope you're enjoying, despite the weather, but forget the weather, I hope you're enjoying some of the things we've got on offer. Are you enjoying it? Oh, that's good. We love you very much. So this session is called The Creative Headspace, How to Take Your Creativity to the Next Level. Can I just ask, how many of you feel that you're creative people? I don't mean make a living out of it, but how many of you feel that you are creative people? You're sort of, yeah. Well, of course, creativity, it's kind of been, it's commercialised in a way, isn't it? We think of people who write books, do art, and become famous through their creativity as creative people. But I think this is a bit of an anomaly. I think by our very nature, we're all creative people, and in one way, I wish we harked back to an age when everybody did creative things, and they didn't see a division between the storytellers in their community and the people who made art in their community, because they would see that there were great cooks and storytellers and people who made things beautiful and people who wrote things down beautifully. And I think that's the way that we should all be. Don't you agree? Because, yes, good, we're interacting here, great. Because I think creativity plays an incredible part in our lives and our well-being, actually. Did you know that if you put art on hospital walls, people heal faster? Did you know that? Did you know that if you are having a particularly stressful day and you go to an art gallery and you just wander around that art gallery, don't do anything, just wander around, within 10 minutes your stress levels will go down to 0. Did you know that? So art actually plays quite an incredible part in our lives, and I think we are by nature playful beings. As children, don't we find it really easy to draw and paint? Didn't you find it easy when you were younger? You just draw. Give me another sheet of paper. You weren't fretting or worrying about what it looked like. You were enjoying yourself. You were just enjoying creating. Now, the thing is about when that turns into wanting to, make something professionally or in some way make your living out of creativity, is a whole load of stress and anxiety can build up over that. And so anybody, ask for a different show of hands, who does make their living out of the creative arts in some way, or being creative in some way? There's just a few of us in the room. So there's a bit of a difference, isn't there, when you kind of transition from doing it because you love it and then you end up having to make a living out of it. Something very, very different happens there. And we can start to get a little bit worried about our creation and so on and so forth. But if any of you have ever read about the creative life of writers and artists and so on, I find of all of that really quite fascinating, how they actually get into the zone. That zone where ideas start to just show up, often fully formed. So any of you knows about J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter books. She talks about how all the books just showed up, the idea for all the books, the storyline, right from start to finish, it just showed up in her mind. It was there. The hard bit was writing it down, but the ideas just showed up on their own. And you hear this again and again from creative people. They have to try and get their mind into the zone where ideas spontaneously just show up as though they're coming from another place into their mind. They're not being invaded. They're not being sent, those ideas, from something, some aliens from another planet. But it feels like they're fully formed. So the main job of creative people is often to get into the zone. And as I say, if you read about these things, they may do things like running or sitting by the ocean or sitting by a fire, or some sort of activity or endeavour that gets them into that state of mind. And they will do that. They will get their routines because they know there's no point starting to write or starting to paint until their mind is in that place. And when you get them to describe what that place is, it's sort of a place where not many thoughts happen. I used to like the Talking Heads song, Heaven. Heaven is a place where not very much happens. Actually, heaven is a place where nothing happens. And if you think of that mentality or that state of mind where you've been for a long walk, maybe you're 2 hours into the walk and you sit on the top of the hill and you get your flask out and your sandwiches and you sit there and you kind of go, oh. And you realise all the concerns you had that morning when you set off and all the worries you've been having for weeks and all the heaviness you've maybe been carrying for months, they're just not there. You like that feeling? Now that's the feeling, that's the experience of being in the zone where ideas just show up. And you might have noticed when you're sitting on the brow of that hill and thinking, why was I worrying about all of that? You often suddenly see the answer to your problem. Have you ever had that experience? It just drops into your mind and you think, that was there all along. But my worrying and fretting about it was cutting me off from it. So the first thing to do if you want to be able to consistently get into that zone and have your creativity always work for you, not just to be a writer or an artist, but to be able to solve problems in your life, which, let's face it, is a totally crucial thing for all of us to be able to do, not just in our family life where there's all sorts of things that crop up we want to solve, but also in our professional lives. Most of what we do is sort of solving problems, isn't it? So if we want to be able to do that, we need to be able to consistently be able to go into that zone. So being able to still your mind so that these solutions and ideas can show up is a crucial thing. So one of the things I'm going to do in a little while is I'm going to take you through a very, very simple meditation about how you can enable yourself to do that any place, any time, which I would really urge you to try out. It may be that you've already found your method. You run, or you sit by the fire, or you go to the ocean, or you do your ironing. I've always found that's quite a good way of doing it. But if you might not have an iron, you might not have a mountain nearby, and you need to do that, this is a great method. And once you get the hang of it, you can always get your mind into that state. Now, if you're a creative person, and you've managed to understand how to get your mind into the zone, and you can consistently do that, and you can get your creativity to work really well, and it's working so well for you that now you've got the book out and it's selling really well, or your work gets into an art gallery, and the phone is ringing, people are interested in your work. Something else starts to happen, and that is that you get busier and busier and busier. And then the other thing that can start to happen is that you can start to think that you're a little bit special. Maybe you're better than everybody else. You're more creative. You're a special person. You're maybe even a genius. Now, the thing about it is, this state of mind that I'm describing, that state of stillness, it's not just a state of stillness, actually. It's access to taking our mind beyond its ego. And that's another important function of where really high levels of creativity come from. They come from beyond the ego. Nothing beautiful has ever come from an ego state. Nothing. Lots of things have come from ego states, and they're very sort of grey and fairly ugly. But beautiful things, beautiful sonnets, beautiful music, soaring poetry, things that lift your spirit onto another level. The great pieces of art like Rothko and Turner that you stand in front of and your heart and mind soar. These things do not come from an ego state. They come from beyond our ego. And that's part of this going into the zone, is being able to take your mind, not just beyond the chattering mind in that state of stillness, but to go beyond the ego. And that's when your creativity can really soar. Now, here's the conundrum, because if your creativity starts to deliver for you and deliver something that's really beautiful and people love, and I think this is a very important part of creativity, that we love to share it as well. We want to share, because I believe we're giving beings, and that's a very important aspect of our spiritual and emotional life, is to share. We share these things, it's adored and loved by others. If that happens to us, that starting to think that I am special and I am better than other people brings us slam dunk back into the ego again. And that's when creative people start to talk about the creative block. They've gone off, they've gone into the zone, they've gone into nature, they've done their ironing, they've gone beyond the ego, they've delivered on something gorgeous. Then people start to love it, that's a lovely experience. Then they start to think they're the bee's knees. And they're slam dunk back inside the ego again. So there's two important parts to really taking your creativity to the next level. One is being able to silence the chattering mind, go into that silence where ideas show up. And then even beyond that, going really beyond your ego, which that state of silence will automatically lead you to. If you consistently go back into that state, you'll feel you've gone beyond the little confines of your mind, and you feel this connection to something bigger and broader and more beautiful. I would say it's like a connection to the beautiful wiring of the universe itself. Maybe even you could say to a divine presence. That is really important, but to make sure you don't keep coming slam dunk back inside your ego again and getting that block and being confined back into that non-beautiful place, which is that greyness of the ego, you need to start to think of your talents as something that are there to serve. And I think most of us actually naturally feel like that, but I think the culture that we have now, which is obsessed with being famous and being wealthy, and in one sense sort of clamouring after getting respect and love through our talents, it leads us in completely the wrong place. Whereas if we start to think of our talents as something through which we can serve, we can bring delight, we can inspire others, that's when our creativity can go even higher. Now, there's a very interesting book called Force versus Power, written by David Hawkins. I'm not sure if any of you here know that. But basically, through a kinesiology testing technique, he calibrated consciousness. And he calibrates genius at around 500. On his scale, it's a scale of an exponential scale of 1,000, and genius is around 500. But the interesting thing that he found is that when anyone, but he was particularly testing athletes at that time, start to use their talents with the intention of serving and giving to others, their muscles test a lot stronger and they start to do extraordinary things. So the really extraordinary athletes, basically within their heart, they have a feeling of serving their country or serving their team or serving their sport or inspiring young people. They start to soar at higher and higher levels. Their consciousness goes to a higher level. And I don't know if any of you have seen Maradona. I love watching. I'm not a football fanatic, but I love watching excerpts of Maradona. You know the footballer? Lionel Maradona. You can see them on YouTube all sort of clumped together, and the way he dribbles and gets that ball in, you just think, this is a miracle. This guy's not playing football. You know, his feet aren't touching the ground. How is he doing that? He's doing that. He's doing that because somehow he's in a higher state of flow. He's in a higher state of consciousness. That's how he's doing that. There was a famous deep sea diver, and he could hold his breath for so long under the water, and he described it that his mind would go into this state of connection with the whole ocean, and he was beyond himself in this state of awe and wonder and beauty, and he could hold his breath for these extraordinary lengths of time underwater. And one of his colleagues actually killed himself trying to do the same, because he was just in an ordinary state. So can you see that if you can learn how to go beyond the zone, go into this stillness, go beyond your ego, but then not fall into the trap of thinking you're a special person and try and pull regard and respect and love and get more money and get fame and pull all of these things into a kind of taking mentality, but you can keep your heart open in a giving mentality of wanting to use your talents to serve, this is when you can do extraordinary things through any profession that you're in, because your creativity can go to higher and higher levels. There is no limit, actually, to where your creativity and where your potential can lead you. So, I'd just like to kind of consolidate that by taking us into a little reflection to show you how you can actually do that, because it all sounds very nice, but if you don't know how to do it, it's not particularly useful. So shall we do that just for a few moments? Let's see if we can go beyond the chattering mind, experience a little stillness, and then open our hearts into that giving state where we can go beyond the ego and feel that we want to use our talents to serve, and see what that feels like. And let's imagine right inside our mind is a clear, totally cloudless blue sky. It's a sky full of potential and full of promise. And that sense of openness and wonder we allow to enter our heart and enter our mind. And for these few moments, I ask my mind if it's willing to detach from all the worries and concerns, even the sights and sounds around me. And if I'm willing to detach from all those worries, and let my mind settle down, I can very gradually feel my thoughts slowing down. And start to experience a little stillness. And in that blue sky, I see a bird soaring. A magnificent soaring. It's gliding on the wind. And think of that bird as an idea or a project you're working on, and it's soaring through a sky of endless possibilities. And you let it go wherever it wants to go. It knows where it's heading. Just follow it. Now think again of whatever it is whatever creative project you're working on right now. And think of that as a way to give to those around you, a way to serve. You just want to give your best. No interest in how it's going to be received, or if people are going to like it, or any result that may happen from manifesting that idea, that project. Just allow yourself to feel that your heart wants to give, that you just want to give your best to those around you. Share, collaborate, give something beautiful, delight. And each time you begin to work on your creative project, think of that idea as a soaring bird in the blue sky of your mind, and give that soaring bird of an idea time to go wherever it needs, however it wants to get there. And keep your heart open to giving the best around you, to producing beauty, delighting others, inspiring others. And that intention will take you out of your ego into that state where you can start to feel connected to everything and everyone. And that's the place where beautiful ideas can show up and can grow and become the best that they can be. So thank you very much for listening, and if anyone wants to ask questions or talk about any of the ideas we've covered or anything else, I'll move over to the table of possibilities over there and we can have a discussion. Thank you.